All right, today we're going to share something that rivals any as seen on TV product as it aims to solve removing those stubborn ear goobers. Yep, it's OHIS, next on Live Free and Ham. Hello, and welcome to Live Free and Ham, our bi-weekly show where we discuss ham radio topics in New Hampshire, New England, and beyond. Whether you're a regular listener or first-time guest, we're excited to have you here, and we appreciate your support, and thanks for tuning in to tonight's show. So let's get into the show. I'm your host, Eric, call sign N1JUR, and I'm with my co-host,
Ryan, W1SNH.
Hey, I'm Paul, KF4TPY.
Awesome, and Todd will be joining soon, but we are flanked with a wonderful guest.
Who? Oh, that's me. Hi, I'm Mark, N6MTS.
All right, well, thanks for joining us tonight, Mark. But before we get into the topic, we got a few things we'd like to catch all you guys up on. As I've mentioned before, our storefront is up. If you go to livefreeandham.com/shop, we've been feverishly working on creating more merchandise for you guys to consume. And I want to thank those who purchased from the store, like Rich C. He picked up sweet Live Free and Ham camo hat. Again, thanks for Rich for supporting the show, and definitely head on over there and check out our storefront. And we're also designing a sticker pack, so keep an eye out for that in the future. And as I said before, as always, thanks for supporting the show, as it helps every little bit. And we are in the month of March, so you know what that means. Yep, it's the Live Free and Ham live stream. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, and we'll notify you when we go live. And so since Todd's currently MIA and tied up running his net control duties, we are probably going to skip over our usual something a little extra. Maybe if he gets in here, we'll shoot back to that. But, Todd will get a reprieve because I'm sure he hasn't caught up on his studying for this week. So he'll be able to use it.
He might have been motivated from last time.
Well,
I even had a really easy one queued up for him.
Well, all right. So if Mark's okay with it, we might shift gears here a little bit and put it in reverse.
Absolutely.
We'll jump the gun if he happens to hop in here and go from there. So with that, we're just going to jump right to our usuals. And that is, so what's been going on in your ham radio week, Ryan?
Yeah, so there's been a couple QSO parties on the air lately, so I've been having fun chasing those guys down. Last night I had a QSO with a guy, handheld mic on one hand, margarita in the other hand, and he was in his sailboat in the Chesapeake Bay for the Virginia QSO. And
drinking and sailing, I see no way this will end poorly.
He was anchored somewhere, but it was
very good.
You could tell in the background he had a lot of people on the boat and they're having fun. So it was fun participating in that QSO. And then let's see, in the shack, I've added a new piece of equipment. So I've been playing around with a 3D printer, which has been a lot of fun. So I've taken the deep dive on Fusion 360 and my calipers and designing all the various knick-knack brackets and support everything I need that I've been wanting to build and printing away. So that's been a lot of fun. And it's been a big learning curve, but definitely making progress with that. So it's been fun.
Very cool. Now, so question with the printer, did you finally bite the bullet and buy the bamboo?
Yes, because my old Ender was a lost cause. It just, I still need to go back to it and work on it and fix it and get it running properly. But I got tired of just messing with it. So I got something that worked, and it's fun. So if you guys have anything you need printed, let me know.
Oh, don't open that door. Yeah. I'll just send over a couple of files there, and we'll get that going.
It's like a boat. You don't actually want your own 3D printer. You want a friend with a 3D printer.
Yeah.
So does that also do D&D minifigures?
Anything 256 millimeter? Yeah, 256 millimeter. If it's smaller than that, fits within that plate, you're good to go.
Nice.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'm all psyched for that. So yes, some design files are coming your way, Ryan.
Awesome.
I have a friend here in California who has a bamboo, and she absolutely loves it. She uses it for making production parts, not just prototyping or anything, but she runs a business, and she uses it for actual production manufacturing and swears up and down it's one of the best things out there.
Yep. Money well
So,
spent. It was
yeah.
a very nice purchase. So
Awesome.
Yeah,
So,
it's in my shopping cart, but hasn't quite made its full adventure. And actually, now that it's in the shopping cart, I might end up going down to the Micro Center to pick it up. You probably got a better deal down there, didn't you?
yeah, that's where I picked it up. So
Okay,
our
so
second candy store in the area.
beautiful
So,
candy store, computer
yes,
related, but still candy store.
it's very nice.
All right,
So,
well, good with that. So over to you, Paul. How's your ham radio week, or what's been going on in your ham radio week?
Well, so this week I went out to the park on Thursday. I'm just shy of 500 contacts. I got 493, so I'm getting there. A little bit at a time. I spent some time editing footage. I put up my my FX4CR field video, which was mostly overlaid with music, because when you're doing digital in the field, there's not a whole lot of audio you can put with that.
Well, you could drive people nuts.
Yeah, I mean, you could just listen and me talk to myself for 4 minutes, but I don't think anybody actually wants that.
and I worked you on your one of your POTA park theirs.
Yeah, that was Thursday when I was using the 891.
Oh, okay. Yep. So
yeah.
So
nice
Okay.
and clear. 5
are
knots.
you doing FT8 in the field?
So Eric had the FX4CR, and it has Bluetooth functionality, and so I wanted to see if I could do FT8CN from my tablet. I use a Kindle Fire tablet.
Okay.
And yep, sure enough, like as long as you link the tablet via Bluetooth, and then also link within the app, you'll have both transmit and receive audio. And as long as you have cell service, you can sync your clock very easily. But if you don't, then you have to kind of play with it and watch the decodes until you get it so that it's close enough where you can make a contact.
Yeah, fair enough. That's cool.
Yeah, I would. I have to say, I love the review, the FX4CR. I appreciate you going through all of the headaches and pains to get that set up, because I bought that, long time. Well, probably about 8 months ago or whatever, and I just really didn't get a chance to do it. And I went on vacation, and I said, "Hey," and he's like, "Hey, I'd love to borrow it and try it." I'm like, "All right, the only thing you do is you got to do a review on it." And so he just, went to the end review. So awesome video review. So head over to his channel. It's KF4TPY, and check that out if you're interested in seeing all that and all of its glory. So cool with that. And so I have to ask, you did sideband with it. Did you really was it good with sideband?
So the thing is doing parks on the air as a QRP station, it works fantastic because everybody's calling you. The few park to parks that I tried to break through, like they weren't hearing me over everybody else. But otherwise, I mean, I'm sure you could probably get a different microphone that would work with that radio, but my big hands and that little tiny microphone just it didn't like it.
Same problem.
Golly, if only you had a headset that you really liked and a convenient way of connecting that headset to that radio.
Oh,
imagine that.
Imagine
Could
that.
we talk about that? Do expand on that, Mark. No.
Only if something like that existed.
Cool. All right. Well, like I said, we're just waiting for Todd to hop in. But anyway, Mark, what's been going on in your ham radio week there?
Well, this past week, I keep saying that I'm going to finish up some of the previous projects that I've been working on for Halibut Electronics. So really quickly, for your listeners or viewers who don't know me, my name is Mark Smith, N6MTS. I run a company called Halibut Electronics. I've been doing this for about 2 years now. And I make and sell devices for amateur radio stuff. And I have to be that generic because I've got a wide variety of different things. Anyway, I've been trying to bang out a couple of little projects that I've been working on just to get them done and behind me so that I've got nothing else to distract my ADHD mind and let me concentrate on the next project that I'm working on, which is Eggnogs. And so this past week has been the first time that I've been able to really dedicate to Eggnogs. Eggnogs is a kit that will help you build an egg beater antenna nominally for use with satnogs, which is where the name came from, Eggnogs. It was just too good of a pun to pass up. But basically, it's a small circuit board with the correct mounting holes for the different aerial loops, and then you can solder in some specifically length coax phasing loops to the bottom. This particular design had a common mode current choke on the board as well, but I don't know that. I haven't figured out yet whether the final product is going to have that or not. Anyway, it's going to be an entire ecosystem, and I've got the plans of what I want it to be in my head. Now I just need to build it and make sure that it actually works, and then, start doing the other things. But the important part is that I got rid of all of the other stuff off of my to-do list, and I've been able to concentrate on Eggnogs, which has been finally really good.
Awesome. Very cool. So I guess the question I have for you is that you obviously run a business in the ham radio place. Do you do anything ham radio personally related, or is it just?
Do you actually use the things you do? So on the podcast that I'm on, Ham Radio Workbench, one of the other hosts, a guy named George Zafiropoulos, KJ6VU, he has a saying that he calls himself a propagation ham, where he builds a thing, puts it on the air and says, yep, it works, and then moves on to the next thing. I suffer from the same affliction. You wouldn't guess it from hearing me on podcasts, but I don't like making small talk with people on the air. And so if there are, like, the idea of going out on the air and striking up a conversation with somebody I don't know is not all that exciting to me. I like contests. I like doing things where you've got kind of a structured interchange. I like things like FT8 because, again, it's a structured interchange and you're not having to make small talk with people and those kinds of things. So, yeah, I'll operate FT8 just kind of randomly. I can do it I use a Flex 6400, so the Smart SDR software for my Mac and for my iOS phone. I can go on and just do FT8 right on the phone through the Flex wherever I'm at. So, I'll be sitting at the kitchen table, just finished my breakfast. I got 15 minutes to kill before the next thing happens. I'll get out my phone and bang out some FT8 contacts. But, and then I also monitor the local 2-meter call and 2-meter adventure frequency, 146.52 and 5.8 respectively. But there's almost no activity around here. So.
Yeah, we had George on a while back to talk about the adventure protocol, and really kind of inspired me to kind of start digging out my reprogramming for my 300 for the truck for that stuff, and it actually got some interest from a few other people around here that run repeaters that they're like, oh, this is better than the kind of just general 5.2, and so it kind of sort of planted the seeds. But I think once George finally gets his a full official product set built and what he's currently working on, that more people will start getting some traction on it. So it'll be looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, since Todd is not here yet, I will pick up my last spot here, and I'll say for my week, I was actually away last week. I just headed out to South Carolina. My son's college baseball player, so we went down there for basically spring baseball. And on the way, my family, my wife and daughter specifically, basically pulled my leg to make me go and activate a bunch of parks all the way down. So, I begrudgingly took out all my, gear with me, and we slugged through Connecticut and Pennsylvania and Virginia, and, just had a whole blast. I mean, it was fun to be able to just go out and activate and have a video on my channel of it. So if you want to go check out that whole escapade, go check that out. But outside of that, I just gotten back and looking to try to just keep my head above water with work. And I've got a few other projects that I got to tackle. Specifically, I finally got my replacement SD card for my clear node for my All-Star set up for the truck. my existing ClearNode configuration card basically disintegrated itself, and it didn't really get a chance to finish putting the buck boost converter in and the step down, circuitry for being able to power the Pi and get it all set up. So it's running off its own battery setup. So that's coming soon, but I'm just still in the infancy stages with getting that built and put together. So looking forward to kind of having All-Star back in the truck when I can't, be near the local repeater, that I usually talk to and stay on and participate on.
So, Eric, in the past, you were having either over or under voltage issues with the various equipment in the truck there. Did you change out the hardware to fix that?
Yeah. So after I basically had a bulletproof setup with my FTM 300 in the truck. Everything was working fine. I had it tied into a switch panel and had my truck pre-wired for all of HF that I was getting ready for to put my 891 in there eventually in the spring. And all of a sudden, things started to act up, and my audio from my 300 would just literally cease to exist. I could see myself on the display, key up. Long story short, I had a spare 300 that I was using going to be used for satellite work. Threw that in the truck and things started working. So I figured it was a cold solder joint or something in the radio. So it went off to Yaesu about 2 weeks ago. So we'll hopefully get that back, and that'll become the satellite rig. And the 300 the truck's back and working fine. So none of my voltage issues were just me thinking they were voltage issues, and it turned out to be just a radio issue. So that knock on wood is all good and back and running. So happy with that.
Excellent. So timing's everything in life. Todd, how you doing?
Sorry guys, long net tonight. 16 check-ins, and they were very talkative. They had a lot to say. So I even told them, I said, I gotta do the podcast, but didn't seem to bother them. So I apologize.
No problem there. Glad you're on.
So Todd,
go ahead.
Yeah, Todd, how's your past week going?
Well, I went outside today. I had parked my car down the driveway, and I went to move it up, and I noticed that my antenna is drooping into the trees. So I took a look at it.
To the best of us.
Yeah,
sorry.
we've had some wind, but the cord that was holding the antenna to the tree, the paracord, it looks like something chewed it, and it just is like ripped, and now the antenna is kind of stuck up there, but it's drooping, and there's no way to get it unless I take it down. So I texted Eric, and I'm going to need his gun again, but it should be a quick fix. It's still up in the air, and I did test it, and it still works. I'm still making contacts. It just needs to get a little taut and get back up there where it needs to be. Besides that, I've just been really busy. Work's been crazy. I was hoping to get a POTA in last week, but that didn't fall into the cards, so wasn't able to do that. And that's about it. So here I am, glad to be here, and sorry I was late, but I had net duties.
That's all right.
Problem. So I guess we could ask a question. Do we want to dive into your something extra? You up for it?
Well, yeah, if we're doing which one are we doing, Paul? The one I think I've been studying all week, so I hope it's propagation.
We retracted back to the third element.
All right, good. Well, I've been studying that all week, so I should do pretty well.
All right. Well, then, without further ado, let's just kick this pig and get this going here.
And now for something a little extra with Todd W1STJ.
All right. Well, yeah, you've heard it here. This is where we help Todd study for his extra class license. In each of our episodes, we pick 3 questions from the extra class question pool to test his knowledge, hoping he gets closer to getting towards his upgrade. If you'd like to follow along with us, you can always head over to hamstudy.org, which is always a great resource to help you prepare for your test. And it's recommended by 3 out of 4 volunteer examiners because the ADA was unavailable for comment at the time of survey. Without any further delay, I'll hand it over to the VE Quizmaster. Take it away, Paul.
All right, Todd. I'm bringing back an oldie for you. Which of the following frequency ranges is most suited for meteor scatter communications? Is it
That'd be.
A?
I already
Yeah,
know the
go
answer.
ahead.
I think
Go
it's
ahead.
C. C.
We're just fire, all cylinders. Sweet.
There you go.
Great
Good
job.
memory.
All right.
All right, question number 2. How does the maximum range of ground wave propagation change when the signal frequency is increased?
It
Is
decreases.
it A? Todd's been studying.
Perfect.
I'm just glad this is a video podcast and not an audio. Anyway.
Oh, it's both.
All right, for the third and final question, here you go. What is the primary characteristic of chordal hop propagation? Is it A, propagation across geomagnetic equator? B, successive ionospheric refractions without intermediate reflection from the ground? C, signals reflected back towards the transmitting station? Or D, propagation away from the great circle bearing between two stations?
All right. Geez, it's either B or C. And let's see. I'm gonna go with B. B.
And the answer is
Oh, you nailed it.
Congratulations.
That's a first.
Woohoo. That's 100%, my friend. I'm impressed. The studying's paying off.
Yes. All right. So now we have to do the next podcast. What one am I studying for? Because I want to do one section at a time.
Well, let's
I want
go
to
to
do
4.
All right, let's go to 4. I got to do one section at a time. Just too much to study, all mixed up.
Understood. All right. Well, to wrap this up, so if you're on the journey to studying for your technician general extra class license, in that case, hamstudy.org is a great, excellent resource for getting your ticket. And also, we want to say if you've recently received your license or upgrade, let us know. We want to recognize you on the next episode for all the hard work and effort. And you can always do that by emailing us at livefreeandham@gmail.com, and we'll make sure to mention you on the next show. And so with that, let's dive into our topic for tonight with Mark from Halibut. And go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, no, really appreciate you, Mark, coming on the show. And, I came across you first through, it started with the evolution of the shack. You ended up getting one radio, and then I wanted to add a microphone, and, the hand mic over the speaker occasionally worked, but then, the kids running around the background and needed headphones.
Yep.
Then you add a second radio, and then you start getting more and more complex with the shack. And it's like, how do you integrate that?
Yep.
And there were a few products, one or two worked better than others, but it was on our club Discord, a fellow club member texted me. He's like, hey, take a look at this. This looks like the secret sauce to the shack renovation. And so I started looking to the OHIS standard, and sure enough, it's spot on, just agnostic between radios and allows you to make those connections, the way you want, however you want it, however creative you want to be. And, we're happy to have you here. And part of, the podcast is talking about your product. So we're curious to hear about the evolution and how it's been going and where you looking forward in the future with the products.
Okay. So actually, I want to make a distinction. There are two different aspects to this. There is Open Headset Interconnect Standard advocacy, which is not a commercial activity that I do. I am doing this as a community member trying to push for a standard. And I want it to be an open standard that anyone can implement, even DIY at home. Other corporations can build and integrate into their products. Radio manufacturers, I want them to be able to adopt it directly into their products as well. So that is a non-commercial standards advocacy task that I do. Then I take the standards advocacy hat off and I put on my commercial run a business hat, and Halibut Electronics happens to be the first company that is taking this OHIS standard and building devices to it. So these can be working against each other, because on the standards advocacy side, I will help people build things that compete with the commercial side, right? And I am always very clear and upfront. Standards advocacy comes first. I want adoption. If we can get adoption of the standard in the community, in the industry, in the marketplace, then, you know, a rising tide, all boats, that whole thing, right? If we get adoption of this standard, even if I get priced out of that particular market, I will be ecstatic that I am no longer able to sell my overpriced stuff because somebody else has made it better and cheaper, because they're not just a one-person business, right? Standards advocacy comes before commercial stuff. I just happen to be the only one doing the commercial stuff right now. So that's a distinction I want to make. So I'm happy. The first stuff you were talking about is the standards advocacy. So let's go talk about what the standard is and what it does, what it accomplishes, and why people want it in their shack. And then we'll talk about the devices in kind of generic terms. And then we can talk about my products that implement those things. But I kind of want to make a clear delineation between those two. Okay, so what is Open Headset Interconnect Standard? Well, let's look at each of those words. Open, meaning it is free like speech, right? Live free or ham radio. So this seems like it would be right up y'all's alley, right? It is a open standard that anyone can use without royalties, without you know, paying anyone or licensing it or anything, right? It is an open standard submitted for everyone to use. Open headset. Headset meaning, I kind of don't like the fact that I used headset, but I can't think of anything better. Headset as in defining all of the interfaces between the user and the radio. Generally, that's a microphone for transmit audio, headphones for receive audio, and a PTT. And then people are actually proposing an extension to the standard for Morse code paddles. And so we may be trying to add that into the standard too. Cool. Interconnect, meaning I want to be able to connect any headset to any radio without having to have a adapter between them that is unique to the pairing of that headset and that radio. That's really what I'm trying to do. Is right now you can get an adapter for this headset that goes to this radio, and if you want to connect that headset to a different radio, you need a different adapter. And it's not just an adapter for the devices, but an adapter for the pairing of those devices, right? And that's kind of a pain in the butt. And then standard. I want it to be a defined standard that anyone can implement, you know, with the documentation that being there clear enough that you can actually build something useful and interoperable. That's the word I was looking for. That you know, devices from different manufacturers can interoperate, so that you're not locked into any one particular manufacturer of hardware. So it is, OHIS is a standard that defines a physical and electrical interface between a headset and a radio. It includes the definition for the microphone signal. What does that look like electrically? The headphone signal or the receive audio. What does that look like electrically? Your PTT. What does that look like electrically? What are all the cables? What are all the connectors? How do you design a system that, you know, kind of maximizes the capabilities and functionality there? And then the idea being, ideally, headset manufacturers would implement OHIS directly, and you wouldn't need an adapter. You'd just have an OHIS plug hanging out of your headphones. And radio manufacturers would implement OHIS directly, and you'd have an OHIS socket on your radio, and I can just take my headset and plug it into the socket. Getting the existing manufacturers to adopt a new standard is going to be a very long road. I fully acknowledge that. So in the meantime, we have to build adapters. So how are these adapters any better than the other adapters that I was just talking about? Well, take that one adapter that connects this headset to this radio and pull it into two parts. All right. So now I have an adapter for my headset that is unique just to that headset and doesn't care what radio it's connected to. and it converts whatever that headset is to an OHIS standard port in the middle. And then similarly on the radio, I have an adapter that's on the radio that is unique to that radio only, doesn't care what headset is plugged into it, and is unique to that radio, converts whatever that radio is to the standard in the middle, right? That radio adapter stays with that radio. That headset adapter stays with that headset, and they never leave, right? They are tied together. And if you do this on all of your radios and all of your headsets, you now have this standard in the middle that allows you to connect any headset, no matter what it was on this side, because the adapter has converted it to a standard on this side, right? And same with the radios. It doesn't matter what's on this side because the adapter has converted it to a standard on this side. And so now I've got all of these standard interfaces, and you can plug any headset into any radio.
I love it. It's great.
So that's the idea.
Very cool.
So, just quick question. So basically, if this kicks off and you get this to happen, you're hoping that the radio manufacturers will then, so you don't have to have that adapter, they'll just put that port in their radios, all of them. So Yaesu, ICOM, Kenwood, they'll all have that port, and everything would be in. So kind of like, a standard, like if you had like a USB port, like that's what it is.
The other examples that I use, we have standards in the industry already, right? Like everyone uses 13.8 volts plus or minus 15% for their DC power, right? And now Anderson power poles have kind of become a de facto standard, but like the radio manufacturers haven't picked that up yet. But because it's all the same electrical standard, it's easy to go from Anderson power pole to that 6-pin rectangular, not quite Molex connector on the back of HF radios, or that 2-pin T-shaped blade plug that's used on mobile rigs, right? Whatever the power connector is on the radio, it's easy to convert whatever your battery system is because electrically they're the same. Same with RF. 50 ohm coax, right? It may be a BNC connector or an SO239 or a Type N or an SMA, but those are easy to adapt back and forth because it's the same electrical standard, right? So the real important part with OHIS is getting that electrical standard defined and adopted. Once you have that, I also have defined physical standards, but it's a lot easier to choose a different physical standard and make adapters to go back and forth between them, because at that point, it's just wires. You don't have any active circuitry to convert from an electret microphone down to a dynamic, or to go from speaker level to headphone level, or whatever the changes are that need to be made. So, that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kind of question on the standard a second is in terms of the adoption. I know just obviously in the IT industry, like adoption takes a long time for anything to kind of come around. USB-C is an example that hams have been complaining about for a long time. Do you find has any company been receptive to this kind of standard there at all initially as you kind of put it out there?
Yeah, so I've been approaching what manufacturers I can. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus.
That's fine.
So no one has said, ha, 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 no way. I have had what I call optimistic skepticism.
Okay.
Right? The way I describe it is, that sounds like a great idea. It'll never happen. That is kind of the worst response I've gotten, is people that are skeptical that you'll ever be able to get the entire industry to agree on a standard. I'd be lying if I didn't think they were right, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I have spoken with I've tried to speak with 3 manufacturers. I have spoken with 2 of them. I need to get the other 2. And I am calling the big manufacturers, Yaesu, ICOM, Kenwood, and I'm including Flex and Elecraft in that list. So those 5 manufacturers are the ones that I'm really trying to reach out to. I have spoken directly with tech leads on 2 of them. And they have both said, if you get the rest of the manufacturers to agree to this standard, then we will adopt this in a heartbeat. We think this is a good idea. This absolutely should happen, but we won't be the only one to try and adopt the standard.
Right.
And I think that's fair, honestly.
It is fair.
That's kind of pessimism. Like, we don't want to be pioneers in the industry. We're going to wait and see before,
I don't want to put in a bunch of time and effort on a port that's never going to get used because the standard never gets adopted.
Mhm.
Right? From a business perspective, it makes sense.
It does.
I can't fault them on that. And so what my task has been, and I haven't done it yet because I've been swamped with other things, but my goal is to get those 5 manufacturers, Yaesu, ICOM, Kenwood, Elecraft, and Flex, on a call or on an email thread or in the same place, and probably with the ARRL. I'm thinking if there's something I can use them for, it would be this. This seems like a good thing for the ARRL to get involved in. And get them all in a room and say, here's the standard that I'm proposing. These are my rationale for making all of the decisions I did. And see if they are willing to say, yes, we're not going to go change our existing manufacturing line, but the next time we design a new radio, we will add this to it. Like that. Right. That is kind of the most I can ask for.
Would the specific PCB boards that would go into their radios, would they be universal between the various manufacturers? Could you help with the hardware that they would be putting in their boards just for the interconnect? I guess, is there some way you can help prompt and make it easier for them to make that integration?
No, because electrically it's going to depend on whatever's on the inside of their radio.
Right.
Most of the manufacturers have dynamic microphones out the front, except, ICOM definitely, they use electric, and I think, I can't remember which one of Elecraft or Flex copies Yaesu, and then the other copies ICOM.
Yeah.
No, it's Kenwood and ICOM, excuse me. So one of the other two use electric as well, and I can't remember which one it is. But they already are expecting electric on the front panel, but the other ones are expecting dynamic. So they are the ones who are going to know how to do that. Now, I can give them the circuits that I use to convert from one to the other, if they want that sort of thing. But I'm sure their engineers are able to do that just as well. And then the physical connection, it's an RJ45 socket. It's a shielded RJ45. And so there's nothing there that I need to help them design, right?
Yeah.
They already know how to deal with RJ45s.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So one method that, if it comes together is great, is getting all the manufacturers to talk together. Mm-hmm. Or, in my head, I think of like the mountain bike industry. They went through decades of change and hardware upgrades and everything. And it wasn't until a lot of the riders really started saying, hey, we want, hydraulic disc brakes and we want this type of gear train. Did the manufacturers start listening to the customers?
Yeah.
And I think if, you keep down this path of promoting it and talking about it and getting more and more people interested in it and having the customers asking and begging the manufacturers, coming at from a different angle.
Yeah. Grassroots.
Hopefully, you'll get some traction.
Yeah. That's my other thought. And that's kind of the tact I've been taking of going on to shows like yours and mine and various different places and club meetings and whoever else will let me blather on about this for half an hour or so, and get the word out and get the users thinking about it, and ideally getting the users to use it. Right now, I'm the only one who's manufacturing these adapters. So to put the commercial hat on, I sell a couple of products, one called the HHI Radio Pro. HHI stand for Halibut Headset Interconnect. So it is the Halibut Electronics product line that implements the OHIS standard. And Ryan is holding up the Radio Pro right now. So that is a product that I have designed that you can connect to your radio using whatever sockets and ports the radio has. and then it also passes them through to the other side of the radio, or of the Radio Pro, so that you can still keep your microphone connected. Even though you have to connect my adapter into the microphone port on your radio, you can still connect your microphone to the front of the Radio Pro. And when you're not using OHIS, your standard mic, the stock mic, will still work. Excuse me. So you're not losing any functionality on your radios. You just put this box in between your microphone and the radio, and your headphone, your speaker and the radio. Anyway, so the Radio Pro is an adapter that you can use, but I'm the only one who's making those and selling them, to the best of my knowledge. So I know what the sales numbers are, and they're not fantastic. And I am, so a little bit of behind the scenes here. I've been doing Halibut Electronics for 2.25 years right now, and I have not pulled any money out of the business. I've been living off of savings for 2.5 years. And part of that is because the first year I was designing a product that didn't go to market for reasons I won't bore you with right now. And then the second year I was designing a product that did go to market but didn't sell, which is the Radio Pro and the User Pro. And I think the problem is that the prices are too high. I don't think the large number of people want to buy these things at $225 a piece. But that is the price I need to be able to sell them at to be able to make a reasonable profit. So,
well, and to be truthful, Mark, I mean, don't sell yourself short. I mean, it's a device that definitely solves a apparent need that a lot of hams don't realize that they have, either in their own shacks or in their, field day type configuration or EOC kind of style, that they just have been, kind of creating, like you said, all those adapters to make things all work. And it's just been a kludge for them for a long time. So it does take a little bit of time for adoption. And I'm hoping, we can spread the word for folks out there. And, if there are guys out there that, your clubs think you can use it, make sure you get Mark on it. His details will be in the show notes. And, so make sure you get him involved and start spreading the word, because it's a great, great standard and a great product too.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm actually going to the International DX Convention in Visalia, which is just a 3-hour drive for me here, second weekend in April.
Cool.
And when I talk, so I'll be venting there. I'll have a bunch of my products there. I will also be giving a talk on OHIS. And actually, I donated a full contesting console Radio Pro to User Pro setup to their raffle.
Wow.
So somebody is going to be going home with a contesting console, a Radio Pro, and two User Pros, which is kind of ideal for a contesting station or a DX station, where you've got two users that are trying to use the radio at the same time. One who's operating and the other one who is logging. That kind of thing, right? It's really, I designed this for my local field day club. Is really what it boils down to, the contesting console. Which is not technically OHIS because it's not an adapter, but it uses OHIS. It is a device that goes between the user and the radio, right? And so you connect two headsets to it and then one radio to it, and the two users on the headsets have an intercom between them so they can hear each other through their microphones. And then they can both hear the radio as well. And each user has their own independent mixer, so they can adjust the volumes of the radio and the other person's microphone, their own microphone, and then what I call the ambient microphone, which is just a little MEMS mic that's in the device itself, so you can hear what's going on around you in physical space. And so each user has that little 4-channel mixer that they can control what's in their own ears. And anyway, so the point is that you plug two different headsets into it and one radio into it. To build that device without OHIS, now those two headset ports need all the configurability and complexity of that user adapter, right? Is the microphone a dynamic or an electret? Is it stereo or mono? Is it contact closure to ground or completing the microphone line? All the different things that make connecting a headset difficult. You need all of that complexity. Similarly, connecting to the radio, is it a GX16, which are the 8-pin round connections, or is it an RJ45, or is it a separate microphone and headphone plug? All of that complexity would need to be integrated into this device. But with OHIS, I have a standard interface to design. I know exactly what the microphone signal needs to look like. I know exactly what the receive audio signal needs to look like because it's standard. And then you connect that standard cable into your radio adapter, and that converts whatever to the radio. And same with the headsets. So when I say that I would be ecstatic if other people could price me out of the market on adapters, I say that because these devices that go in the middle are what I actually want to build. Like that is the Halibut Electronics product that I think I bring special sauce to. The contesting console, and then another one that I'm going to be designing soon called the station console, where the contesting console is 2 users, 1 radio. The station console is 1 user, 4 radios.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so you can mix all of the receive audio into your headphones. Your microphone gets split and sent to all of the radios. And then you've got a little 4-position switch to tell which radio gets your PTT.
Oh, wow.
So that's the station console. Again, much easier to build when I have a standard interface between the user and the radio. Much more difficult to build when that port needs to be configurable for any type of radio.
Very cool. And one of the things I like tinkering with things, and with my current Go box, it's just a very basic setup with 4U rack in it, 7300 tuner, and it's a single user box. And I would love to, part of the tinkering and playing with your OHIS is getting that contest station, the 2 user pros, and all integrating it into the box.
Yep.
Now, it's tricky because ideally it'd be nice if it was in like a 1U rack space, and I could just slide it in there and then plug the user pros in front, and the I call it the feng shui is just really nice. Yep. But the I think version 1 of having it, and I've seen it, and I've been meaning to ask you or email you for the 3D file to print out the bracket that holds the Pro and the contest station in one. And I think that's going to be a real slick setup. And I'm sure you have it somewhere there in your workshop.
So it's not my design. I
Sure.
need to give a mad shout out, mad props to Dale. I don't remember your last name. Your call sign ends in DHZ because I always think of like Dale Hertz.
Sure.
But his name is Dale, and he designed this thing, and it's fantastic. So the box that the user pro, that the radio pro comes in, and is the same box that the contesting console comes in, but the radio pro has all of the connectors on the side panels, and the contesting console has it on the big flat surface on top.
Yes.
I don't actually have one in the case right now, but this is the circuit board that is the contesting console. And so you can see like all of the different potentiometers here for the different mixer ports. But you can see how it comes out the flat surface, not just the connectors on the side here. And so he built this kind of H-shaped bracket, or designed it and 3D printed it, where you can slide the Radio Pro in the bottom and all of its ports are exposed on the side. And then you would slide the contesting console on the top. So it's flat face is exposed. And then you just have these cute little short interconnect cables that go from power down into both of them, and then from the radio port into the radio adapter. And it was brilliant. I loved the way he designed that bracket. So I think that the bracket, the kind of the blue H.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I shared that with my mailing list, groups.io, search for Halibut Electronics. It's in there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked that bracket a lot.
And I think a setup like that for field day is going to be awesome. I think that's definitely the version that I'm looking to build.
So I do have, and I need to get this up on the website and make it for sale, but I have no idea how I'll ship them. I have designed a 1U panel with holes cut out for that size case, but with the little screw hole, so it's not just a rectangle, like the corners are taken out of it, so you have a screw hole there. So basically you can take the screws out of the device, put this on the back of the panel, and then put the screws in from the front of the panel, Shut up and take my money, he says.
Take my money, please.
So it works great for the radio pros. It does not work for the contesting console because the controls on the contesting console are on the flat surface, right? They would not be facing out of the 1U.
I'm just thinking like 90-degree angle connector style. You must make them somehow. So
U joints.
yes, yeah.
So yeah, the unfortunately that panel is not wide enough to put 8 potentiometers. I might be able to like get it down. If you don't want the ambient mic and you don't want your own side tone, I can probably get it down to 2 RJ45s and then a radio volume and intercom volume. I might be able to fit 4 pots and 2 RJ45s on the front panel and make that work. I'd have to look at that.
Anything with a 1 or 2U standard, I think that would be incredible. So especially, for the home shack, I try to use a lot of rack space, and that would be a real nice setup. But
ideally, it would be something that goes in the rack and does all of the audio mixing in the rack, but then you would have a remote cable to the control surface. Right? That would be even better. So that's actually, if I'm likely to build a contesting console designed to go in the rack, that is likely the way I'll do it, because I think I'm going to do the same thing with the station console. Honestly, that would be
take my money.
Take my money. Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome.
Start making t-shirts, Mark. That's all. That's where you need to really start to pad the coffers a little bit. Take my money with the t-shirt you sell, and just grow from there.
So, true story. My second business with the name Halibut was making geek t-shirts. It was called Halibut Stuff. My first one was in high school. I just kind of did computer repair and whatnot. My second business was during college, and it was called Halibut Stuff. And we sold geek t-shirts and various other things. You can actually still see the webpage. It's stuff.halibut.com, and you can see the shirts that we used to sell and things like that. There's part of me that has been tempted to try and revive Halibut Stuff and add some of that to my portfolio, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, a few broken links, but we'll throw that in the show notes.
Yeah, the broken link is to what used to be the shopping cart. So like the right-hand side of the page is, it used to be the shopping cart that isn't there anymore.
So, the ham radio hobby has so many niche markets and areas of interest that I haven't even explored yet. One of them is working satellites. And I know you have a particular product that you've been working on.
So there are actually 2. Remember when I said I spent the first year designing a product that was never able to go to market?
Yes.
That is the first one, and that is the one where I got the majority of the people following me who were like, shut up and take my money. It was a product that I called SOAR, Satellite Optimized Amateur Radio. It was an appliance for operating FM satellites. So the things that you really want when you do an FM satellite is you want a full duplex capable radio. I want to be able to transmit on 2 meters and receive on 440 or vice versa at the same time. Right? Mobile rigs can do this, no problem. They used to make HTs that could do this, but there are none that are made anymore. There's one Xiegu, I think, that can do it, but the receiver sensitivity, it gets completely blown out when it's transmitting. So it will let you receive and transmit at the same time, but the receive sensitivity is not good for satellites when you're doing full duplex operation. So it's effectively useless in this context. But Kenwood stopped selling the D72. The D74 didn't have full duplex, and we were really hoping that the D75 was going to have full duplex, but it doesn't. What's that?
Wah, wah. Yeah.
So anyway, I was designing a radio that was capable of doing a small portable battery operated radio that was capable of doing crossband full duplex. And I had a microcontroller in there that was going to, do the UI and control the radio modules and everything else. And if I've got a microcontroller in there, there's a lot of stuff we can do with that. So I added a GPS, and if you know what time it is and you have internal storage, which it did, to store the TLE data for the satellites. TLE stands for three-line elements, or two-line elements. Basically, it's all the numbers that describe the orbit of a given satellite. And so if you have these numbers and you know what time it is, you can work out exactly where a given satellite is in the sky. And so the GPS tells you what time it is. The GPS also tells you where you are. And if you know where you are and where the satellite is, you can easily calculate the azimuth and elevation, right? And so I can display the azimuth and elevation on the screen. I can also calculate the relative velocities between the satellite and the user on the ground. And when the satellite is coming up over the horizon, it's coming towards you fast enough, at least at UHF, to shift the frequency by about 15 kilohertz up, right? So as it's coming toward you, your receive frequency is about 15 kilohertz higher than what it's transmitting. And similarly, you need to transmit below where it's expecting to receive you. So you're going to be receiving 15 kilohertz high on UHF, but you need to transmit about 5 kilohertz low on 2 meters, or reverse those, depending on which bird it is and which is the uplink and which is the downlink. So you have to deal with this Doppler shift of these frequencies. And right now, the way a lot of people do that is they'll program 5 channels into their radio, 4 or 5 channels, and they'll do like a plus 15 kilohertz, a plus 10 kilohertz, a plus 5 kilohertz, 0, minus 5, minus 10, minus 15, and you've just got these channels in a row, and you just kind of slowly turn the channel knob as the satellite moves overhead. But it's very manual. And so you've got your hand on the tuning knob, turning these channels as it's going. You have your other hand on the PTT button. You have your third hand holding the antenna, and the fourth hand holding the microphone, right? You're running out of hands here. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to automate this as much as I could. So the microcontroller would do all those calculations. It would display the azimuth and elevation on the screen. It would automatically adjust the frequency of the radio modules for the Doppler compensation. So you didn't have to worry about the Doppler compensation at all. It handled all of that for you. And then the other thing it did is it recorded the pass audio, both the uplink, your microphone, and the downlink, the receive audio, as separate channels in a WAV file. So it would record the audio of the pass locally into a digital file, but with each channel separate, so you can listen to each one individually, separately. And all of this is basically an appliance for operating FM satellites, right? The only thing that you need to do is PTT and hold the antenna in the right place. Mm-hmm. And I even had some product ideas for how to help with that. When you have the go ahead, Eric.
Didn't have a record option out, like to have the audio out to record to like either tape, or did have, I think you were building something with the eventuality to put like an MP3 recording option in. Well,
it was, it already recorded it.
Okay.
It records it as WAV file to the local built-in SD card. Wow. But you know, it can record hours of audio, and any given pass is like 15 minutes at most. But yeah, so it's already recording the audio. But once you have the azimuth and elevation, there is a serial port on the device that would squirt out the azimuth and elevation data on the serial port, and you can connect that to something else, like either a 2-axis rotor, and you can use it to actually point the antenna automatically for you. Or the one that I was really excited about is I was going to make a display with a magnetometer, so it knows where north is, and an accelerometer, so it knows where down is, and then it would get azimuth and elevation data from the radio, and it could calculate the differences. So if the satellite is there, but you're pointing there, it would be able to say, like, move up, and it would just give you like this little targeting crosshair, and your goal would be to point the antenna such that the red dot stays in the middle of the circle. right? And then as the bird moves through the sky, it will help you target which way to point the antenna.
Wow.
So you
That
can
sounds
still
like a
do
fun
handheld,
video
but
game.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, that was SOAR. And then the reason that I couldn't get it to market is because I was using these modules that we're actually starting to work on again. Shoot, I could swear I had one nearby. Anyway, the SA868. A lot of people use the 818 or the DRA 818. Those are kind of very common. It's this little surface mount module. It's about 1 inch by 2 inches by like less than a quarter of an inch tall. And it is an HT in a module. You give it power, microphone audio, and then, it'll give out receive audio and then a serial port to configure the thing. And out the other side, you've got an antenna connection.
Wow.
Awesome.
And it does all of the RF, all of the FM modulation, all of the pre-emphasis and de-emphasis, audio filtering, DTMF encoding and decoding, all of that. I'm sorry, not DTMF, CTCSS, all the PL tone encoding and decoding. It does all of that built into the module. The problem that I ran into is the VHF modules worked flawlessly. I could transmit and receive on those, no problem. The UHF modules, they received just fine. But as soon as I configured them to try and transmit into a filter, it started having problems. It was unstable. The output power would fluctuate dramatically. It looked like it was oscillating, but I could never find an oscillating spur on a spectrum analyzer. I don't have good spectrum analyzers. My best analyzer goes up to 900 megahertz, or 600. Anyway, not high. Not high enough to find harmonics or oscillations or anything like that. But in other ways, in all other ways, it was performing like it, or behaving like it was oscillating. And you have to filter the signal if you're going to do full duplex. It is impossible to just say, oh, I'm just going to send this on, bypass the filter and transmit without it. It's going to be just as crappy as the Baofeng reputation is, because that's what it is. It's a Baofeng basically on a little module. And if you don't filter it, it's going to be just as crummy as their reputation. But also, it won't. It'll start interfering with the 2-meter side if you're not putting a high pass filter on it. So you have to filter it to be able to do the full duplex operation. And I was never able to get that resolved. I've paid RF engineers to look at it. I've talked about it on the podcast, on my users group, tried to find people who can help me figure this out. I got a local friend who has much better equipment than I do, and I've been over, spent many nights over at his house on his test equipment, trying to figure out what was going on. And then when I noticed that other products that use that same module, if you bought the VHF version, it would come with a low-pass filter. If you bought the UHF version, they bypassed the low-pass filter. So that tells me that these other products ran into the same problem I did and were not able to fix it either. Wow. So this was not just something that I was doing wrong, that this was something systemic with those modules. Huh. So that's when I decided I was going to put SOAR on hold and go work on other things.
So until something new comes down the pipe, we're kind of in a holding pattern with that.
Or until I make something new, which is what this board is. Well, this is the first version of it anyway. So Mitsubishi makes these little tiny RF amplifier modules. They're 4 pins, plus the ground heatsink on the back. And it is 2 powers, a VCC power and a grid bias power, and then RF in, RF out. And it's 50 ohms in, 50 ohms out. And then ground is on the heatsink itself. And these things are rock solid. Like, these are fantastic RF power amplifiers. The ones that I bought are good for, I think they claimed 8 watts output, which after you run it through the filter is likely to give me at least 5 watts, maybe even a little bit more. 5 was kind of my target. And so my goal, the first goal is to take the SA868 or 818 that I've been using, but instead of running it into a filter, run it into a pad. you can see all the big resistors there. So those resistors make a 50 ohm load, or those two there do, and then those are in series, and those are the other load. So anyway, this makes a an attenuator that brings the half a watt that's coming out of this on low power down to the roughly 20 milliwatts that the Mitsubishi module needs as an input.
Okay.
But because that is a purely resistive load, the SA868 will operate just fine. Because when I ran those modules into a dummy load with no filtering, they worked great. You put it into an antenna with no filtering, it works great. It's when you add that filter that it becomes a problem. So on this board, the first thing it sees, well, besides the relay, is the attenuator, which looks like a resistive load. And then I'll take that and send that into the module, and then module output through another relay and then up through that filter. So this was that filter I was talking about, that if you connected that filter directly to the output of that module, bad things happened. But by attenuating it first, I'm trying to do this backwards, attenuating it first, then running it through a different power amplifier, then running it through the filter, this should be much cleaner. And
Awesome.
so this is a development board that I laid out to test this theory. If I can make this work, then SOAR is probably back on the table.
Woohoo!
My eventual goal is actually to replace the SA868 with the chip that's inside the SA868. It's called an AT Alpha Tango 1846, one of those. Alpha Tango 1840 something. And it is the chip that does all of the magic. Audio in one side, RF out the other. It's the same chip that's in, the Baofengs and a lot of the inexpensive Chinese radios. It's that chip. And there's nothing wrong with the chip itself. What's wrong is with the filtering that people put after it, or the inexpensive RF amplifiers that are causing all kinds of problems. So by using a good RF amp, I'm hoping that I can make a module that will be higher power and higher quality, higher performance, and stability as the ones that you can get on eBay right now.
I'm totally
Right.
fascinated.
Can I borrow your money to buy that, in advance? I'll just give
Sure, yeah, I'll pass it all around. Why not?
So that's SOAR. That is on the someday list. What I probably should have been talking about if I were a better marketer is the satellite-related product that I am actively working on right now. I mentioned it earlier, called Eggnogs. There's these type of antennas called egg beaters, which they look like that because it looks like a whisk. But it is a full wave loop and another full wave loop mounted 90 degrees, physically 90 degrees apart from each other, but also 90 degrees electrically apart from each other. So you put a quarter wave loop of feed line between the feed points of each of these loops here. And that will delay it by 90 degrees, which is a quarter wavelength. And if you do that, the hard part with doing that is the when you put two 50 ohm antennas. See, this doesn't make sense to me, because when you put two 50 ohm antennas in parallel, which is basically what you're doing, that should be a 25 ohm load. But every document I see calls it a 100 ohm load.
double it.
I don't think they're in series. They're in parallel. So I'm not sure what magic is going on there. The point is, though, that the loop that you use for the phasing needs to be 100 ohms.
Okay.
I don't fully understand why. And so you can either use 100 ohm coax, which isn't very common. There is a 92 ohm coax called RG62 for any of us old computer nerds who ever did Novell networking back in the 80s. You might remember ArcNet. ArcNet uses RG62. So if you've got a spool of that laying around somewhere, then you can make egg beater antennas. But there's also a way you can do it by making two runs of 50 ohm coax. And you use that as a shielded twin lead feed line. And you have to solder the shields together at either end, but keep them disconnected from other It's a weird wiring diagram. And
does the math work out better with the dual versus the 92 ohm? I would assume maybe a little bit more
Presumably,
accurate.
because the dual would be exactly 100 ohms,
Right.
whereas the 92 would be a little bit off.
Yeah.
Although honestly, you have to be very careful about how similarly length you cut these, right? Because then you might get some weird phase shifting on one of the legs being phase shifted more than the other and things like that. So it's complicated. I don't know a lot of the details, but so I'm trying to design that circuit board inside that will make it easier for you to connect, a feed line to a connector and then have all of the phasing loops in the right place. And then with the stainless steel hardware that goes through the PVC cap, of course, the PVC cap, those holes need to be in very specific locations. And I have a CNC mill. So I have bought a bunch of caps that I'm going to be milling with those holes in those very specific locations that will be included in the kit. So the goal is that the kit has all of the parts that are hard to come by, like the specifically milled cap, the stainless steel hardware, the circuit boards, and the phasing loops. But then the customer is responsible for getting the stuff that you can get at any hardware store. So this is 2-inch PVC as the mast. So the mast is just 2-inch PVC sticking down. You get that at your local hardware store. Whatever materials you want to use for the aerial loops. This is Romex. This is 14-gauge Romex that I pulled out. And that works great for 440. I needed to go to the 10-gauge Romex that was left over from building my shop to do the 2-meter loops. Because the 2-meter loops are, 3 times the diameter of this thing. And they're very big and floppy and whatnot. So I needed the larger gauge wire for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the kit itself will be frequency independent. The board doesn't care what frequency it is. The only frequency dependent parts are the loops, which you're providing, and the length of the coax on these phasing loops on the inside. And I'm going to give you a long enough length that you can cut either 2 meters or 440 or anywhere in between or whatever.
Okay, right. Cool. Any attenuator? It's right near the antenna. The LNA.
Amplifier.
Amplifier.
So let me show you an earlier version of Eggnogs. This was a prototype where I was trying to put an LNA, a low noise amplifier, on the board. It's not focusing. Anyway, there's an LNA chip in there and then a little relay that will turn the LNA on when you have bias power. Man, that looks even worse when you zoom in like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Anyway, so bias power will flip the relay and put the LNA in loop. And then when you drop bias power, it'll take the LNA out of loop and bypass it and allow you to transmit. So bias power on for receive, bias power off for transmit. That was the goal, and I tried to put it on here, and it was just too tight. It didn't work out. So what I've done instead is I have removed the amp from the antenna board. The antenna is now entirely passive, but I have put the amp on an optional board that will hang beneath the antenna board. So again, it's not focusing. There's a little symbol here that says eggnogs up, eggnogs this way. And then here it says T-Nogs goes down. I'll explain what T-Nogs is in a little bit. But all of the LNA and the bypass hardware is on this board. This board is sized to fit inside a 2-inch PVC. So you'll have a little vertical connector, a male connector coming out here that will connect directly to the female connector on the board on the inside. With these, it's going to be SMA. The board inside here will take either an SMA or a BNC, so you could choose whichever one you prefer for your feed line. But if you're going to be using Ampnogs, then it's SMA and SMA, and you can literally just attach this directly there, and it will hang down immediately beneath the antenna in the middle of the feed line. And the advantage to having your LNA as close as you can to your antenna is that you get the best signal to noise ratio that way.
Sure.
Because as your cable attenuates it, you just end up getting more atmospheric noise in the LNA. So you really want this as close to the antenna as you can get it.
So you probably know I don't own a IC 9700 yet, but do they have the would that be needed for the ICOM?
So the LNA, the Ampnogs.
Correct.
Yeah. So it needed no, but it will perform better with it.
Yeah.
Because the receiver, the LNA amplifier in the 9700 is in the 9700, not at your antenna, right? So with the goals of trying to keep the LNA as close to the antenna as possible, that's what Ampnogs does for you.
Sure.
If you don't need that, if you got a short feed line or something like that, then you can do without Ampnogs. And just run it straight, run Eggnogs straight into your 9700. But if you've got any length of feed line, 10, 20 feet or more, you'd probably benefit from Ampnogs.
No.
And then down in the shack is what I'm calling T-Nogs, because apparently I'm a sucker for a drink pun. Do I have a T-Nogs here? I do. So this is TEA Nogs. Anyway, so the goal behind T-Nogs is you give it power. I've got Anderson power poles or USB-C or whatever power source you want. But you can also hook up a PTT. So, for example, my Flex Radio has a GPIO output that it will close a contact whenever it's about to key up the radio. And so if you send that into this port here, when you key up, when this thing gets a key up signal, it will remove power. It will remove power from the RF line. So this is a bias T injector, right? So you give it Anderson power pole here and it injects bias voltage onto the coax. But it has that PTT switching on it is the whole goal. So it will, if you don't have a radio that will automatically turn off the bias voltage when you press PTT, then you would need T-Nogs to be able to inject that power and turn it off on a PTT.
Okay.
The 9700 will actually do that. So you could build Ampnogs without T-Nogs, and the 9700 will drive that correctly. Came out
Awesome.
weird. Yeah, but for radios that don't do that, T-Nogs will get you hooked up.
So for your, let's see, it's currently the middle of March. On your time frame, what's your what are you estimating for delivering these products?
I always got to be careful with this because every time I give an estimate, it ends up being twice as long.
We'll put a disclaimer at the bottom of this.
Yeah, yes. Disclaimer. Eggnogs, the passive antenna is very close. What I've spent this week doing is building various different designs. I've got 3 or 4 of these different boards that are wired up differently, trying to figure out which one is optimal. And then, of course, I would also love to be able to build this, but keep the common mode current choke on it. And that adds a whole nother complexity that I haven't even talked about here. But anyway, so once I figure out which of these is best, then I can go forward with releasing Eggnogs as a fully passive egg beater antenna project. That is very close. The next thing I would design would be Ampnogs and T-Nogs probably together, because honestly, I need T-Nogs to be able to use Ampnogs. But Ampnogs I could probably release earlier because it's just something that goes inside the PVC. I would probably put a piece of heat shrink around this, but it doesn't need a big, expensive, snazzy case, right? You want it to be small and lightweight so it could be inside the PVC at the antenna. T-Nogs needs to work on a bench or in a rack or something like that. So T-Nogs would need to have a pretty case wrapped around it, and I haven't even begun thinking about that yet. But so anyway, I want Eggnogs out in the next month or two.
Okay.
T-Nogs and Ampnogs will probably be several months after that.
Okay. Oh, that's exciting. That's very cool. So, excuse me. Going back to your OHIS, you have one item on your website called the User Adapter Kit. And
so, yeah, we talked about Radio Pro and User Pro. Those are both Halibut branded full products. Let's say, so Ryan, you were holding those up earlier?
Yes.
Can you show those again?
Yep. So I got the user.
That's
Pro.
the User Pro. You plug your headset into the side with the 3.5 millimeters, and then it's got the RJ45 on the other side. And then the Radio Pro is similarly a. Oh man, I printed the silk screen upside down. Oh, much better. So those are finished, assembled products.
Okay.
And you were asking questions about how to configure them as well. We'll get into that in a second.
Sure.
Are any of you familiar with the M17 project?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm friends with the M17 guys, and I actually did some early work on the standards document. I have some code in the M17 code base. I'm very excited. The base 40 call sign encoding mechanism is my code. I'm very proud of it. Anyway, I was chatting with them about Module 17, which is a device that goes between a radio and a user to take the user's audio, encode it using M17, and then transmit it out a digital radio in M17. So it's only doing the baseband stuff. It doesn't actually have an RF module in it, but it generates the data that can be sent out an RF module. And I was chatting with them, and actually one of the folks who was working on it was asking me about OHIS. And so we chatted in a meeting, and I convinced them to put OHIS on Module 17. So Module 17 was the first project, the first open source project to use OHIS.
Cool.
And while I was chatting with them, they're like, all right, are there any open source hardware for these things, or is it only your commercial stuff? And I said, well, the standard is open, but there's no open source implementation. I see now that this might be pretty bad. And so I designed an open source OHIS adapter that anyone can use and remix and, do whatever they want with this particular design. It has the 3.5 millimeters, the same plugs as the User Pro, and it's still got the OHIS RJ45 on the other side. But it's not as configurable, and it doesn't have all of the same features that I put in the User Pro. It has everything you need to be a user adapter, but the User Pro also has a VU meter built into it, so you can see the blinking LEDs, which helps you adjust the mic level and some things like that. But this can be configured either for a normal headphone and microphone or as a CTIA, which is the 4-pin TRRS headset connectors, where you've got both microphone and headphone on the same connector. So it can be configured for either of those, and it also can be configured for either dynamic or electric microphones.
Very cool.
So it has a preamplifier that is powered from the bias voltage that you send down the wire for an electret, but we'll take a dynamic microphone in and amplify it up to electret level, which is what the standard is for OHIS. Anyway, and so I sell these as a kit. There's already at least one guy who has been making his own OHIS user adapter kits using the design in GitHub. This design is open and freely available for anyone to use. It's on the OHIS GitHub stuff there. I can give you a URL to put in the show notes.
Yep. I appreciate it.
Yep. But if you and so if you want to get your own boards fabbed and you want to source all the parts and put it together, by all means, please do. If you have any questions, you want to remix it, you want to submit some code pull requests into the design, I'm all ears. This is standards advocacy hat on. Like, I want this to be adopted and used by everyone who is at all interested in this. I also sell it as a kit on my webpage. As you know, if you don't want to bother with all of the sourcing of parts and everything, and you would rather just throw, I think it's $29.
Yeah.
At
35.
35. Okay.
Yep.
So if you want to just throw $35 at it and have it show up in your mailbox a few days later, then we can do that as well.
Very cool.
I should probably mention that I should do a quantity discount on these for like clubs, right?
Sure.
Because this would be a great club build project. If you decide that your club is going to adopt OHIS, maybe make the club pay for the radio pros for all the radios in your club shack. And then the individual club members can buy and build their own user pro for their own headset.
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea. I think we do
Yeah.
a lot of like build bench work Zoom meeting, things that we do with our club. So yeah, that'd be a great club project, and I
Yeah.
would definitely love to see that, especially with field day, since all of the struggles we have with interconnect issues.
Absolutely. So, Mark, I have a user pro here,
Mhm.
a wonderful little unit. And when I had originally ordered it from you, it's configured for XLR. So,
Okay, now I remember you. Yes,
You're the weird-
we went back and forth a lot about, okay, can this work on an XLR mic? Yes, it can.
Right.
How do we do this? Yeah.
and so I'll get other ones to work with the field day box and everything. But
Mhm.
walk us through, let's say a person has one microphone, they want to use a different, microphone headset, and how they would go about converting it.
Okay. So first off, what you have there is an EAP unit, the early access program, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because it had the mic level and the two LEDs right next to it. So when you got 3 holes along the bottom there, that's the EAP unit. The production unit just has 1 hole, and then the LEDs on the RJ45 socket are the VU meters. So that's how I can tell the difference at a distance.
Okay.
So I don't have one in easy grabbing reach. Do I? I got this. I pulled this out before coming here. Where'd it go? Okay. Anyways, I would have to take it apart. Inside is this giant grid of solder jumpers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the way the grid is laid out is the rows are pins on the connectors, and the columns are signals, right? So I've got 4 rows. There you go. That's the config module. So that's the much bigger one that goes inside the Radio Pro. Turn it 90 degrees so the pots are at the bottom. The trim pots are, nope, that was 180. The other way. There you go. Perfect. All right, so that is up and down on that thing. So you'll notice that there are a bunch of columns and a bunch of rows. The rows correspond to a pin on all of the connectors, right? So the top 2 rows are the center conductor and shield of the RCA. Then the next 4 rows are tip, ring 1, ring 2, sleeve of the 3.5 millimeter microphone connector. Then the next 8 are pins 1 through 8 of the RJ45. The next 8 are pins 1 through 8 of the GX16, which is that 8-pin round microphone connector that is common on HF radios. And then the 4 down at the bottom are tip, ring 1, ring 2, and sleeve of the headphone or speaker, depending on what your radio has, connector, right?
Okay.
So each row is a pin on the connectors, and then each column is a signal, like mic plus, mic ground, or headphone left, headphone right, headphone ground, PTT, or whatever. And so you can literally apply any signal to any pin by dropping a solder blob at the intersection of that row and column. And the way you do solder blobs in manufacturing is by dropping a 0 ohm resistor on the pick and place machine. So the pick and place machine knows how to drop 0603 components on the board in specific locations. And so you can use it literally a 0 ohm resistor, which is just a jumper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the pick and place machine can drop these jumpers in the right places, which is how I was able to configure them, pre-configure them for different radios. So it looked like the one that you had was Yaesu. Did I see that correctly?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So Yaesu Mobile or Yaesu HF?
Mobile.
Mobile. Okay, because those are different boards, unfortunately. Yep. So that has a pre-configuration to be able to work with Yaesu mobile rigs, which their RJ45 is unfortunately different than the RJ45s in use on the Yaesu HF rigs, which is why I needed 2 different boards for Yaesu Mobile and Yaesu HF, because the RJ45 pinouts are different. But you literally just drop a blob in the place to connect that pin to that signal. And if you want to change the configuration, you remove the blobs that are no longer relevant, or remove the 0603 resistors. You don't have to save them. They can go off into your carpet and never to be found again, that's
Yep.
fine. So I don't mind giving people surface mount things and saying you have to, do something with the surface mount because you don't have to save it. But then you just drop a little solder blob in there instead, and that connects that pin to that signal.
Okay. Awesome.
And then, I'm sorry, the same thing is in the User Pro as well. It's just a much smaller field.
Smaller, right?
Yeah.
Very
Fewer
cool.
signals and fewer pins available.
Well, I envisioned for the field day box getting one of each for dynamic, electric, and letting that second person say, decide which box they would use. And I would get a third one that would be tailored to my headset.
Okay.
And then it'd be ready to go for whichever club member walks up to the station and wants to operate.
So the ideal way would be for every member to have their own user adapter for
Yes.
their headset. And that is the ideal way. And I put that in bunny rabbit ears because I understand that is a lot of money and a lot of different parts that will probably only ever get used, or at least in the near future, only get used for field day, right? So it's going to be somewhat hard to convince people to buy their adapter for one weekend. So you can get away with that, but you have to make sure that everyone's headset, whether it's electric or dynamic, is the same pinout.
Okay.
Right? Like the most common one I would expect would be CTIA, because if people are going to buy their own headsets, you can get PC gaming headsets from Amazon for $20 to $40 for a reasonable, inexpensive one. And then, like the super expensive ones are $200, right? Whereas you cannot get a Heil Pro set for $200, right? That's going to be $600, or $400 to $600, and Radio Sport is going to be $600, right? So the really high-end headsets for amateur radio are super expensive. That's why I expect CTIA, the PC gaming headset standard, to be the most commonly used one because they're so inexpensive.
That's
Okay.
good trade-off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see some 3D printing cases here coming up. So
Yeah, I want to build design a 3D printed case to replace these brass standoffs, and just have it be just a skin that goes around the outside of this thing.
sure.
As just walls, right? So that you have like this red circuit board. From the outside, you see the red circuit board, then like a black 3D printed vertical, then this circuit board, and maybe another one underneath it, so that you don't have all of these gaping holes on the side. But I haven't gotten around to designing that.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating. It's exciting. Can't wait for it to continue to gain popularity and momentum. So we really appreciate you taking the time to share that with us.
Like I said, getting me to shut up is the hard part.
All right.
All right. Cool. Well, so to kind of put a bow on this, Mark, obviously there's many ways I'm sure people can reach out to you. What kind of the 3 ways for folks to be able to get in touch with you if they want to either learn more about obviously your products and the company, or more just the OHIS standard, or just want to reach out to you directly?
Yeah. So if you want to learn about OHIS, go to ohis.org. I was amazed that there was a four-letter .org domain still available, but it was, and so I jumped on that as soon as I could. So ohis.org has the standard dock itself and a video presentation that I've done and a few other things there. There's also a groups.io for OHIS. It's linked to from ohis.org. If you're interested in my commercial products, the things that we talked about today, and I have a few others that we haven't talked about, go to electronics.halibut.com is the webpage for that. I also have a URL shortener, so if you went to hali.fish, it'll go to the same place.
Cool.
HALI.fish. Anyway, electronics.halibut.com. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can send me an email, mark@halibut.com. I am on Mastodon as @smitty@halibut.com. Sense of pattern forming here. I also have a YouTube channel, which is @SmittyHalibut. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, the Ham Radio Workbench Discord channel.
It's just a small channel, only
Yeah,
5.
yeah.
220
Yeah.
episodes or something.
So I'm on the Ham Radio Workbench podcast. You can go to hamradioworkbench.com. We have a Discord channel, Discord server set up that's pretty active. It's getting more active, and lots of really cool discussions going on there. I think that's enough for now.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on and, going into great detail with all your products. It's definitely exciting to see some, some standards. Being in an IT world, I'm very much like, I love standards when they apply and they work well. So,
Yeah.
I applaud you for pushing forward that needle forward to make OHIS come to the foreground there. And, we'll do everything we can as a, Live Free Ham crew to kind of spread the word and get people more aware of it, because I think, it'll solve a lot of my headaches as a field day coordinator when trying to get several field day sites set up and, a bunch of different people all happy and able to have fun with the field day. But cool. All right. Well, so with that, as I said, thank you for joining the Free and Ham podcast community. Remember, if you haven't subscribed, I have to ask what you've been doing. But, there are several ways you can connect with the show. You can always head over to our shop at livefreeandham.com/shop and pick up some merch. Or if you're an Apple podcast listener, you can always leave us a show review on iTunes. And as always, you can support our show through Patreon and buy us beer links. They're all conveniently located in our show notes and website. And for all the stuff that we talked about tonight on tonight's show, all those links will also be in our show notes too as well. So you can always look there for any of the things that we talked about. And if you want to reach any of our show hosts, you can always head over to livefreeandham.com and reach us out there. And so, as always, thanks again for listening. For all of us at Live Free and Ham, 7-3.
7-3.
7-3.
7-3.